Hi guys, welcome back to the reading corner. Happy Monday. We're going to continue reading from The Family Under the Bridge. Chapter 5. Armand scowled ferociously as he pushed his buggy along the river. He walked through another bridge tunnel. It was deep and inviting, and there were iron rings over which he could hang his things. But the Paris fireboats were moored along the quay. Comes a fire on the waterfront, and all of Paris will gather on my roof, he mumbled. So he plodded onto another bridge. He only stopped once to watch a man pull in his fishing line, because he thought there was a big fish on the hook, but it was only a sodden shoe. That's the way our hopes go, Monsieur Armand sadly told the fisherman. Then he began jumping up and down with excitement. The mate to the one in my buggy, he cried. That's it. The fisherman yanked the old shoe off the hook and tossed it to Armand. Ooh la la, Monsieur, said the hobo. But that just goes to show we should never give up hope. At last he found a bridge shelter that suited him. He spread his canvas as carefully as a family man was laying the rug in a new house. This isn't as cozy as the room that Canary made for me, he admitted. Funny how those black lines on the concrete kept out the draft, and he didn't sleep well that night. He kept wondering about the children. Were they warm enough? Wouldn't they be lonely? He tried to pretend to himself that he was fretting about something else. It was my bridge, he said out aloud. They had no right to put me off my own property. I ought to go back and assert my rights. When he woke up next morning, he noticed that a light snow had fallen during the night. He sat up and rubbed his eyes as he looked out at the quay. Paris had turned white overnight. It was a beautiful sight for those who could stand in a warm room and look through a window. What would the children do now? They'd probably play in it and get their death of cold with no grown-up to look after them. I'll show them, growled Armand. I'm going right back there and tell them what's what. I'd like to see them try to put me off my own property again. So back he trundled his buggy, and the wheels left wet black lines in the snow. There was no sign of life around the fireboats, but as he neared the old bridge tunnel, two women in fur coats came walking along down the quay. In alarm, Armand noticed that the trail they were leaving behind him ended at the canvas propped against the wall. He quickened his shuffling steps. As the two women passed, they turned their heads toward him. Poor, wretched creature, exclaimed the woman in the black fur coat. Perhaps we can save him, said the woman in the brown fur coat. Oh, go, feed the pigeons, jeered Armand. His big footstep prints erased theirs in the melting snow. He pulled the canvas aside. The children were crying. What's the matter? Asked Armand. You still bawling because I left? You might have known I'd come back. Susie pulled Evelyn closer. Two women were here talking to us, she sobbed. They've gone to get somebody. They're going to take us away and put us someplace, said Paul, wiping his eyes. And they say they're going to put Mama in jail. Susie wept. Oh, please help us, Monsieur Armand. Please don't stay mad at Mama. Armand kept twisting his braid around on his gray head. Now the soup was spilled into the fire. He knew women like those two in the fur coats, always trying to make hobos go to work or wash their faces or read books. And now they were picking on children. Must have run out of hobos. It really wasn't his affair, but Mayor Ellie had been right. These little ones, he pulled his beret down tightly. That was it. Morelli. Start packing your loot in your cart, he ordered. We've got to get out of here fast. Women like those two don't give up easy when they have a mind to save poor wretches. He helped the children gather together the food pans and fold the blankets. He pulled down the canvas and covered the cart with it. But where will we go? Asked Susie. Mama won't know where we are, cried Paul. We can't leave Mama. She's the most of our family. I'll come back and tell your Mama where you are, said Armand. I've got just the right nest for you. He had to help them get their market cart up the steps. Then, because Evelyn's feet were so cold, he sat her in his buggy on top of his possessions. He pushed her down the street and crossed the bridges. Susie and Paul followed, pushing the cart. If I were a big man, said Paul, I wouldn't let those women be so bossy. Where are we going? Asked Susie as they came to the Rue de Rivoli. To get Father Christmas to help us? Armand looked back. You don't need Father Christmas to help you, he said. You've got me. Besides, he's too busy. It's only 4 days until Christmas. Will you tell him we've left the bridge? Asked Susie anxiously, just in case he does find a way to bring us a house. Now, don't you worry, said Armand. Leave everything to me. Instead of leading them down the Rue de Rivoli, he waited for the automobiles to stop. He motioned the children to come alongside him with their pushcart. They crossed the street abreast, and just as they reached the curb, a taxicab splashed them with dirty slush. But they kept on, single file again. Ahead of them loomed a giant shed. It was as big as a railroad station and as black and noisy. The Halles, Armand called to them. That's the big central market where all the food comes into Paris. The children quickened their steps at the word food. I'm hungry, said Paul. Well, you needn't go hungry at the Halles, replied the hobo. They sell most of the stuff wholesale. But a fellow like me can sometimes wangle some food there. I'll try my luck. They saw that whole streets were covered by black sheds. Now they had to pick their way carefully. The sidewalks were cluttered with crates and baskets. The pavement was slimy with torn red, white, and blue papers. They kept bumping into things because they were so busy goggling at the sights. Boxes of fruit and vegetables made walls around them. There were long alleys with endless rows of beef, sheep, and hog carcasses hanging on hooks. Men went carrying great baskets filled with hocks and pigs' feet and calves' heads. A man was lifting an immense box. He wore an outlandish hat which made him look like a carnival figure. Who is he? Asked Susie, pointing. Why does he wear that funny hat? He's one of the strong ones, answered Armand. He's mighty proud of that hat because wearing it means he can carry 440 pounds at one time. Can you? Asked Paul. Armand shuddered. Ooh la la, I'll never know, he declared. They hurried past trucks back to the curb and lines of desks where buyers and sellers did their business. As they came out into the street behind the Halles, Armand met many old friends, ragged men and women who were picking through the old vegetables and fruit thrown into the gutter. Hello, Charlotte, he waved to a bleary-eyed man with his clothing held together by safety pins. Good morning, Marguerite, he greeted a woman dressed in men's clothes. Found any diamonds in the trash cans? Then he bumped into a six-wheeled metal cart pushed by a man with a tall hat and baggy pants. Well, if it isn't Louis, he exclaimed, making enough money to pay your rent in that mole tunnel off the Place Maubert. Louis grinned toothlessly. I can get you a job today, he offered. They need more pushers. They always do. Armand started away. I'm pushing, he said. And you can see I've got my own pushers with me. So long. The children hated to leave the house. They had enjoyed the noise and bustle. And with all that food, said Susie, wouldn't you think they could spare us just a little bit? They pushed their carts past St. Eustache Church and into a street teeming with other carts. It was as if the great market had spilled into the street in streams of fish and meat stands along both curbs. Paul stopped to look in the window of a coffee shop where colorful stuffed birds of South America were posed on open bags of coffee beans. The asphalt pavement ended when the Rue de Montorgueil became the Rue de Petits Carreaux. Now they tramped over patterns of cobbles so tiny that they looked like mosaic. Our man stopped them when they came to a building with 3 black Egyptian heads trimming its front. He pointed to a narrow, winding alleyway, part of the old Court of Miracles, he said. In the early days of Paris, all the beggars gathered back in there for shelter, and nobody dared bother them. He led them into the ancient valley with its dingy shops. Why did they call it the Court of Miracles? Asked Susie. Because it was like miracles, the way those fake beggars shed their crutches and bandages when they came back here at night, exclaimed Armand. Then they'd feast and make merry, even had their own king they elected. The children looked disappointed to see the rear of a great garage and some more dark stores taking the place of the old court of the beggars. I bet you'd be the king if they still lived here, said Paul. Armand sighed. Ooh la la, those were the good old days, he said, as if he had lived in them himself and was remembering. They left the court with its rakish memories. They passed the doorways of dilapidated rooming houses. In each they could dimly see a battered old stairway, barely wide enough for a good child, curving up to hold dark halls above, or perhaps a magic tower room. Who knew? Looking up at a high window across the street, they saw a queer old lady hanging out her washing on lines stretched across the window. On her washing was 6 long red pairs of underpants and 6 long red gloves, as if she might have been the wife of Father Christmas. At last they came to an open corridor fenced in by wooden boards. Above it rose the crags of buildings which were slowly being torn down, floor by floor. Only the tall, jagged walls were left standing like rocky mountain peaks. On some of them one could trace the original rooms by the great squares of faded wallpaper. They could hear clattering and banging behind the fence, as if the workmen were busy at their destruction. But when Armand guided them through an opening, the children's eyes opened wide. The sandy yard was filled with makeshift tents. 2 rattle-trap automobiles were parked among them. Dark-skinned men gathered around a fire were beating on old pans with hammers. There were black-eyed women with gaudy skirts dragging over the wet sand. Children with half-wild fox faces stared at them. Then 5 dogs came bounding toward them, snarling and barking. Before they knew what had happened, Jojo sprang at the dogs. There was flying, barking mass of fur and growled. Then a gypsy woman came running with a stick. She began beating the snarling dogs without playing favorites. They stopped fighting and howled in pain and fright. Armand grabbed Jojo and pulled him back. The gypsy woman dropped the stick and began talking to the dogs in a low, soft voice. They whined a little, then sniffed at Jojo in a friendly way, as if he had now been properly introduced. Armand, cried Mirelli, welcome, old friend. You look as if you could have come to stay for a while. She looked at the children. Paul and Susie were peeping fearfully around the tramp's back. Welcome, little ones, she said. You will not be lonely here. I will get you something to eat. She helped Evelyn down from the buggy. We don't come empty-handed, said Armand. He began pulling things out of his buggy. First, a bunch of celery, next a couple of apples. Lastly, he proudly held up a dressed calf's head. He saw the little Calcettes staring at the food, as surprised as if he were a magician who had lifted it from a hat. Don't know how that stuff dropped into my buggy, he said to them, especially with Evelyn on top. I must have brushed against something in the house. Gypsy children closed in on the little Calcettes. The boys were coatless and wore patched pantaloons. The little girls were dressed in gaudy skirts that hung to the ground from under their torn coats. Their long black hair was cut in bangs over their beady eyes, but they thought the Cowsets were the odd-looking ones. They fingered Evelyn's red hair. They felt Susie's dark, rough coat, then touched their own gay rags. Your clothes look so sad, said a gypsy girl, but you have happy hair. A gypsy man put down his hammer and greeted them as warmly as Morelli. There is always room for 1 or 10 more in our camp, he said. You can share the tent with Petro, our man. He is in bed there now. He doesn't like the cold, so he sleeps all night. Can the girls live in the van with us? Cried a gypsy girl, about Susie's age. Her clothes were the brightest of all, and she wore golden rings in her ears. But her high shoes clomped like boots because they had no laces. And you can live in our tent, a tall boy offered Paul. It's near a bakery wall, so it's nice and warm. The gypsy girl took Susie by the hand. My name's Tinka, she said. What is yours? Tinka, repeated Susie. What a beautiful name. I'm Susie Calcett, and this is my brother Paul and my little sister Evelyn. We don't have a home anywhere. I'll show you our home, Tinka offered. I'll show Paul and Evelyn too. She led the Calcetts through an alley of tents. In the far corner was Tinka's house. The red-headed Calcetts gasped at sight of it. It was a tiny house with a domed roof and carved brown doors and shutters. Instead of sitting on the ground, it was perched on wheels. A gypsy house on wheels, said Paul. Now that's the kind of home I'd like to have. You can take our house anywhere we want, said Tinka proudly. We just took it to the back of Uncle Mickey's automobile. Susie's eyes began to burn like blue flames. He squeezed Paul's arm. Father Christmas, the little donkey, could bring us a house on wheels, she cried. He could pull it. Let's tell Monsieur Armand, said Paul. Then he can tell Father Christmas what we've decided. Chapter 6. The children's desire for a house on wheels worried Armand. Now, wouldn't it take them time to think of something like that? You don't need to have Father Christmas bring you a house now, he said. Tinka will let you live in that one with her, and Paul will be comfortable in a tent. But we want our own house, said Susie, a house for our own family to live in. Then we can take the wheels off so we can stay in one place. No, let's leave the wheels on, cried Paul. Let's keep moving to new places. I'd like to live like a gypsy. But if you move all the time, you won't be able to go to school, Susie reminded him. Paul looked as if that was not worrying him. The inside of the house on wheels was as nice as the outside. A big feather bed filled the back of it. There were shelves running all along the walls, and brightly scrubbed copper pans hung over the tiny stove. Susie could see that the little house was the tidiest place in the gypsy camp. We put more feather beds on the floor at night so we can all sleep here, explained Tinka. All the girls, but we can't muss anything because Mother keeps a nice house. They stayed in the house on wheels for a long time. Tinka squatted on the floor and told them stories of her travels. Every spring we go way down to Provence on the Mediterranean Sea, she said. We camp among old Roman ruins and bathe in the warm streams. Will you come to Provence with us? Susie was tempted, but she shook her head stubbornly. I have to go to school, she said. I don't think Mama would anyway. And we couldn't go without her. We're a family and we have to stick together. Tinka understood. We gypsies stick together too, she said. The time went so fast that Armand had almost forgotten about the children's mother. You wait here and I'll go fetch her, he said as he noticed that it was almost dark. He hurried back through the streets where the snow had turned into water. The were noisier and busier than ever because most of the work there took place during the night when the great trucks rolled in from all over France, bringing food to hungry Paris. It was dark by the time he reached the bridge. He caught Madame Calcette just in time. She was already descending the steps. At first she wouldn't even listen to him. She hastened down without turning her head. But when she saw that her children and all their belongings were gone, she was only too willing to listen. She burst into tears when Armand told her about the two women. Why can't they leave me in peace with my children? She said. I'm only trying to keep my family together. It's all right, madam, said Armand, patting her shoulder. The nestlings are safe with some good friends of mine, and you will be welcome there too. I should have thought of it before. It's so much better than under the bridge. Madame Calcette stopped crying and followed him back toward the palace. I want to apologize to you, she said humbly. You are a good man. Armand felt uncomfortable. Wait until you meet my friends, he said. He was certain that she would not thank him when she saw them. All the way through the dimly lit streets, Madame Calcette followed several steps behind him. Armand knew it was because she was ashamed to be seen with a hobo. But he did not let that bother him. He had lost his pride long ago. Work at the Halles had reached a fever peak the third time he went through it. Now the woman had to stay close to him so that she would not get lost. They were pushed by baskets, and once Madame Calcette was almost run over by a truck. It was a relief to get back into the dark alleys. But when Armand led his companion through the wooden fence, the woman acted in the way he had expected. Her eyes flashed wide at the sight before them. The dusky gypsies were gathered around a campfire, the building peaks right behind them made the scene one of a lonely gypsy camp at the foot of a bare Spanish mountain instead of in the crowded heart of Paris. One of the men was playing a guitar, and the girl was dancing. Behind her pranced Tinka, trying to learn the steps by heart, and the firelight fell on three red-headed children clapping their hands in time to the music. Gypsies, shrieked Madame Calcette, you have brought us to gypsies? Then in her shame and despair she started sobbing bitterly into her twisted scarf. Madam, said Armand, you cry so much that you will bring down the rain. To think we have fallen so low, wept the woman. My children at home with gypsies. What is wrong with the gypsies? Asked Armand. Why do you think you are better? Are you kinder? Are you more generous? I'm honest, murmured the woman through her scarf. What good does it do to be honest if you aren't kind and generous? He asked. Then in a softer tone he said, you may think them thieves and wanderers, madam, but they are workers too. They are proud of their fine metalwork, and they have a right to be. They are expert craftsmen. Can you mend a pan that has half of the bottom burned out? They are thieves, persisted Madame Calcette. They mean no harm, said the hobo. They don't know there's a commandment against stealing, and you've been doing a lot of talking about families sticking together. Well, we're all God's big, poor family, so we need to stick together and help each other. Madame Calcette began drying her eyes on her scarf. I have nowhere else to take the children, she admitted. The room my sister-in-law told me about is more than I can pay. I must be grateful for shelter, I guess. The gypsies received her courteously, and Mirelli even offered to take her fortune, although Madame Calcette refused. Tinka brought her a bowl of stew to eat by the fireside. It's good pigeon stew, she explained. My Uncle Nicky catches them in the square. He has very swift hands. Madame Calcette looked distastefully at the stew, but hunger triumphed. It is really very good, she admitted after the first spoonful. The three children gathered around their mother's skirts. It is so much nicer here than under the bridge, said Paul. And you must see the darling little house on wheels, cried Susie. Monsieur Armand is going to tell Father Christmas to bring us one. You may sleep in it. Mirelli politely told Madame Calcette. "There is a soft bed for you and your girls in the back." "You are very kind," said Madame Calcette, "but I expect to pay you for our stay here." "We do not take money from our friends," said Mirelli proudly, "only from strangers." Then she disappeared behind a tent. Susie found it more fun to sleep on a feather bed on the floor with the gypsy children. Early the next morning, Madame Calcette returned to her job. Later, the gypsy men left to canvass the restaurants for more pots and pans to mend. "I guess you are having your Christmas vacation from school now," Susie said to Tinka, since the children remained in the courtyard. "We have vacation all the time," said Tinka. "We don't go to school." Susie was shocked. "Then how do you learn to read and write?" she asked. "We don't know how to read or write," said Tinka. Susie was even more shocked. "Then I will teach you," she said. "We will have school this morning." She brought out her well-rubbed piece of coal. She had plenty of blank walls to use for a blackboard. She carefully printed each letter of the alphabet, naming it as she wrote. Armand was stretched out on the ground with a piece of firewood for a pillow. He was watching the little school teacher with good humor. Are you the one who's been writing all those signs on walls and posts telling folks to go home?" he asked. Susie gravely shook her head. Then she held the coal out to Tinka. "Now you copy them," she ordered. Tinka gave her a fox-like grin. Below Susie's letters, she quickly drew two circles, one inside the other. Two circles, one inside the other. Susie frowned. "That isn't a letter. It doesn't mean anything." "Oh, yes, it does," said Tinka, grinning. "If you see that sign near a gate, it means that the people who live inside are good and generous." She quickly sketched an upright line, then crossed it with two short bars. "But that sign means that beggars will be badly received." "Perhaps the people will even set the dog on them." Armand came to life. "I'll remember that," he said. "Seems like I went to the wrong school. Never learned such useful reading." Tinka laughed. She mischievously batted her eyelashes at Susie. "See," she said, "there is some writing you can't read." Susie was willing to be a pupil as well as a teacher. "I like to learn new things," she told Tinka. "Now you teach me some more gypsy writing." Armand stiffly rose to his feet. "It's getting too highbrow for me around here," he said. "Think I'll take a little walk over town." This time the children did not plead to be taken along. They were no longer bored and lonely. Although Paul and the boys had quickly lost interest in Susie's school, they were all playing a game of wolf and sheep between the tents. But Susie had one request. "Will you please go to the Louvre?" "Will you please go to the Louvre store, Monsieur Armand?" she asked, "and tell Father Christmas where to bring our house, and that we'll be satisfied if he brings a little one on wheels like Tinka's." Armand nodded. "That's right," he remembered. "Not much time left. Tomorrow night is Christmas Eve." That is the end of chapters 5 and 6 of The Family Under the Bridge. Bye, guys.